What if the most iconic monument in America almost never got finished? For 25 years, it just sat there, half-built and abandoned. Cattle were grazing at its base. A slaughterhouse was running behind it. The whole thing was one bad decision away from never being completed at all. And the reasons it stalled are not what you'd expect. Political sabotage, a foundation that was quietly failing under its own weight, and a metal nobody had ever cast at that size before in history. This is the real story of how the Washington Monument got built. I went through the full engineering records and used AI to reconstruct the whole process. Here's what actually happened. But very quickly before we start, if you are new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe now so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. In 1833, a private group called the Washington National Monument Society organized the effort to build a memorial to George Washington. They held a design competition. Architect Robert Mills submitted the winning plan. His original concept was enormous. A 600-foot obelisk, a circular pantheon ringed with 30 columns, and a full chariot-mounted statue of Washington at the entrance. Grand doesn't cover it. They did not have remotely enough money to build it. By 1848, the society had raised roughly $87,000. That was enough to start the obelisk on its own, so they dropped the pantheon, the columns, and the chariot entirely. Just the shaft. The site sat on a low hill near the Potomac River. In the 1840s, the river was only a few hundred feet away, close enough for barges to deliver stone blocks almost directly to the construction zone. Oxen-drawn sledges dragged the quarried marble the final distance. Workers broke ground on April 18, 1848. They removed the hill and dug a massive excavation for the foundation. A stepped pyramid of blue gneiss stone quarried from the Potomac Valley, 80 feet square at the base and extending more than 23 feet in total depth and height. The cornerstone ceremony followed on July 4, 1848. President James K. Polk presided. Abraham Lincoln attended as a young first-term congressman. The cornerstone weighed 24,500 pounds of pure white marble, donated from the Symington Quarry in Baltimore County. Inside it, builders placed a zinc time capsule stuffed with 71 newspapers, speeches, medals, and books.
And released.
Construction of the walls began in 1849. The exterior facing used white marble from a quarry near the town of Texas, Maryland, known as the Texas Quarry near Cockeysville. Each marble block was sawed to a 2-foot rise and between 15 and 18 inches thick. Behind the marble facing, the walls were backed with blue gneiss rubble stone set in lime mortar and cement. The walls at the base were 15 feet thick. As the shaft rose, they tapered gradually, designed to narrow to just 18 inches at the summit. The entire structure relied on gravity and friction alone. There was no structural steel anywhere inside. Every block of marble and granite held its position purely through weight pressing downward. Workers used pulleys, block and tackle rigs, and a mounted derrick to hoist stones upward to masons at the working level. Steam engines powered the lifting equipment. Stone cutters shaped each block by hand before it was raised. The marble blocks were floated up the Potomac by barge from the Maryland quarries, offloaded near the site, and dragged into position before being cut to final dimensions and fitted into the rising walls. The construction was essentially dry-stacked masonry. There was no mortar bonding the exterior marble blocks together. Each course locked against the one below through precision cutting and sheer weight. The interior rubble stone fill provided mass, while the marble facing gave the shaft its smooth white exterior. As the shaft climbed, the society invited states, foreign nations, and organizations to donate commemorative stones for the monument's interior walls. Roughly 200 memorial stones were eventually embedded inside, facing the internal stairwell. By 1854, the monument had reached approximately 152 feet. And then the entire project collapsed. Not the structure. Everything around it. In 1852, Pope Pius IX announced a gift for the monument, a marble block taken from the ancient Temple of Concord in Rome, inscribed Aroma Americae. It was meant as goodwill, no different from dozens of memorial stones already contributed by foreign governments, A political movement called the Know Nothing Party saw it as a hostile symbol of Catholic influence over American institutions. On the night of March 5th, 1854, 9 men connected to the Know Nothings crept onto the monument grounds. They overpowered the armed night watchman at gunpoint, rolled the Pope's stone to the Potomac River, smashed it with sledgehammers, loaded the pieces into a boat, and dumped it into the water. The stone was never recovered. Think about that for a second. A foreign government sends a goodwill gift, and a domestic political group destroys it in the middle of the night and dumps it in a river. That detail never made it into my history textbooks. Then the Know-Nothings staged a fraudulent election and seized control of the Monument Society itself. Under their management, donations collapsed. They added only a few stone courses over the next several years, and the quality was so poor that later engineers tore some of it out entirely. By 1858, the Know-Nothings had abandoned the project. The original society regained control but had no money. Then the Civil War consumed the nation completely. For more than 20 years, the unfinished monument sat on the mall like a broken column. Union Army cattle grazed around its base. A slaughterhouse operated behind it. Regiments drilled on the surrounding grounds. The area became known as the Beef Depot. The half-built obelisk, with rotting scaffolding still poking from its flat top, was a national embarrassment. A wooden roof had been placed over the exposed shaft to keep rain out of the interior. The centennial of American independence in 1876 finally shamed Congress into action. President Ulysses S. Grant signed legislation authorizing federal funds to finish the monument. The government took ownership and handed responsibility to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They chose Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Lincoln Casey, a career military engineer who had built fortifications during the Civil War. Casey was methodical, demanding, and obsessed with structural integrity. His first task was examining the existing foundation. What he found was alarming. The original 1848 foundation was far too shallow and narrow to support the planned height. The shaft already weighed tens of thousands of tons, and the soil beneath it was sand, gravel, and clay, not bedrock. The whole structure could settle, crack, or tilt. What Casey did next, nobody had really attempted before at this scale. Workers dug around and beneath the outer portions of the existing foundation, while the 152-foot shaft sat directly above them. Think about that. Tens of thousands of tons of stone overhead, while crews excavated the ground, holding it up. They replaced the excavated earth with Portland cement concrete, then removed sections of the old rubble-stone foundation and substituted continuous concrete enlargements extending out over the new sub-foundation. The entire operation had to be done in stages, shoring each section before moving to the next, so the shaft above never shifted. The operation expanded the foundation from roughly 6,400 to 16,000 square feet and drove it 13.5 feet deeper. Completed by May 1880 at a cost of about $94,000.
I kept coming back to this part. That is either brilliant engineering or complete insanity.
Casey also corrected a deflection in the existing shaft, an extraordinary feat for a structure already weighing approximately 81,000 tons at that stage. That engineering work alone earned him the Cross of an Officer in the Legion of Honor from the French government. With the foundation secured, Casey redesigned the monument. He stripped away the remaining decorative elements from Mills's original plan, smoothed down projecting stonework around the entrance, and simplified the obelisk into a cleaner profile. George Perkins Marsh, the American minister to Italy, advised that the proper proportions for an obelisk should be a height equal to 10 times the width of the base. Casey adopted that ratio, setting the final planned height at 555 feet 5 1/8 inches. One immediate problem: the original marble from the Texas quarry was no longer available in sufficient quantity. Casey first tried white marble from Sheffield, Massachusetts, but after only a few courses, quality problems forced another switch. He settled on marble from the Beaver Dam quarry, adjacent to the original Texas quarry, but belonging to a different geological stratum. The new marble was a slightly warmer shade than the original stone. That color difference remains plainly visible on the monument today. A permanent line roughly 1/3 of the way up the shaft, where the old construction ends and the new begins. It is not a flaw. It is a scar. The monument wears its interrupted history on its surface. That detail stopped me when I first read it. You can stand there right now and see exactly where they quit and where they started again. It's not in a museum. It's just on the building. Construction resumed on the shaft in August 1880. Casey switched the interior backing material from blue gneiss to Maine granite, a harder and more uniform stone that could be cut with greater precision. The Phoenix Iron Company built an internal iron framework of 8 wrought iron columns arranged in 2 concentric squares inside the hollow shaft. The outer 4 carried stairs and landings. The inner 4 carried a steam-powered elevator capable of hoisting 6-ton loads of stone to the working level. At the top of the framework, 4 crane arms swung out over the walls. Each had an 18-foot mast and a 19-foot boom fitted with differential hoisting pulleys. Masons built 20 feet of wall at a time. When a section was complete, the iron framework was jacked up another 20 feet, and the process repeated. The higher the shaft climbed, the thinner the walls became. Near the top, crews were setting marble just 18 inches thick, while working hundreds of feet above the mall on open scaffolding. The pace was relentless. The shaft climbed roughly 100 feet per year. When the walls reached 470 feet, workers began angling buttresses inward to support the pyramidion, the pyramid-shaped crown capping the monument. It started at the 500-foot level, rose 55 feet, weighed 300 tons, and was covered with 262 marble slabs, each 7 inches thick. The slabs had to be cut with extreme precision because they narrowed as they climbed toward the apex, with each course fitting tighter than the last. Special machinery, platforms, and derricks had to be designed specifically for this phase. Workers assembled the pyramidion in freezing winter conditions at heights no building in America had ever reached. The entire crown took 6 months to complete. Then came the question of what to place at the very tip. Casey needed something that would function as a lightning conductor, resist corrosion, and match the color of the marble. Initial candidates included copper, bronze, and platinum-plated brass. A Philadelphia metallurgist named William Frischmuth proposed aluminum. In 1884, aluminum was extraordinarily difficult to refine. The metal had to be extracted from ore through a chemical sodium reduction process. It cost roughly $1 per ounce, nearly as expensive as silver. Nobody had ever produced a large aluminum casting. Frischmuth's foundry in the Kensington neighborhood of Philadelphia was believed to be the only aluminum foundry operating in the United States at the time. Frischmuth quoted Casey $75. It did not go smoothly. He had to build a custom iron mold rather than using standard sand casting. His final invoice came to $256.10, more than 3 times the original quote. Casey sent his assistant to audit the bill. They settled on $225. The finished pyramid weighed 100 ounces, stood about 9 inches tall and 6 inches wide at its base. It was the largest aluminum casting ever made and the first architectural use of aluminum in history. On December 6, 1884, Casey climbed the scaffolding and set the capstone himself. The 3,300-pound marble capstone was lowered into position and the aluminum tip placed on top. Below, a small crowd watched. The monument contained approximately 36,000 individual stones, assembled over 2 construction phases, separated by a quarter-century of abandonment. The Washington Monument was finished. For 5 years, it stood as the tallest structure ever built by humans, until the Eiffel Tower surpassed it in 1889. It remains the tallest freestanding stone structure on Earth. The formal dedication took place on February 21st, 1885. It had been planned for February 22nd, Washington's birthday, but that date fell on a Sunday, so the ceremony was moved back 1 day. It was a frigid afternoon. Casey addressed President Chester Arthur directly and delivered the monument on behalf of the Joint Commission. The public could not enter for another 3 years. Engineers still needed to install a permanent steam-powered elevator so visitors could reach the observation deck without climbing 897 steps. The monument opened to the public on October 9, 1888. Less than 2 years after the aluminum cap was placed, a college graduate named Charles Martin Hall discovered a cheap electrolytic process for refining aluminum. Within a decade, the rare metal crowning the monument became one of the cheapest industrial materials in the world, and the Pope's stone was eventually replaced. In 1982, a priest from Spokane named Father James Grant commissioned a new stone. The National Park Service installed it at the 340-foot level, 128 years after the original was destroyed. There is no steel frame holding this up, just 81,000 tons of marble, granite, and gneiss, stacked by hand, and held in place by nothing but gravity. And that line in the stone is still there, right where they stopped and right where they started again. 25 years of failure written permanently into the most visited monument in America. Most people walk past it every day and never look up. Now you know what you're looking at. If you made it this far, you already know you want more. Hit that like button and subscribe.
And drop a comment, which landmark should I reconstruct next? I'll see you next time.